All right, Karen writes in about her own life, and she says she signed a permission slip many years ago to her husband to have a vasectomy, and she feels bad about that. With that said, she said, can you give me a scripture that would affirm or approve of Christian marriage's Planned Parenthood being life prevention, the pill or any kind of other procedure? Okay, here's what I would say, Karen. There are no verses I can point to other than the fact that there are plenty of Christians in the Bible that are single, and it's hailed as a good thing. Jesus himself encourages singleness. And the reason I start with singleness is because here are men and women who have all of the component parts to reproduce, and they don't. Now, they do that, Jesus says, for the sake of the kingdom. And if they say, I'm going to forego some of what God designed me to do, at least biologically, and that is reproduction, I'm going to forego all that for the sake of the priorities of the kingdom. Kingdom priorities are going to overshadow the effect that I would have as having a family, being a father or being a mother and reproducing. So I do know that the natural intention of certain things in nature, like our own bodies, do not necessitate that they be used for that. And there are times with the right reason that we forego that. So Karen, here's what I would say. There is, even in marriage, you could have a couple that says, because of what we're doing in ministry, because of the priorities for the Lord, we're going to limit how many children we have. And as long as that's preconception, where we don't have sperm and egg coming together, that's the point, I would say, is the point of no return. At that point, we want to do all we can to protect and nourish life. But if you do anything that's going to, as you put it here, how did you say it? Planning parenthood. If you want to plan, and I hate to use that phrase because we know that you think of Planned Parenthood, which of course they are the producing engine of abortion throughout our country, funded by our government. But that's a nasty thought in our minds. But here, let me say this: in you planning to have, say you have your kids, they get married, and they say we're going to wait to have kids for a year. Well, of course they're not going to wait to have relations for a year, so they invoke some sort of parental planning, right? And whatever that is, as long as we are preventing the conception of the egg and the sperm, well, then great. I think that falls in line with the whole logic of Scripture, of sometimes we take what is biologically designed by nature, by God, right? God designs nature, and we're saying no to that for other priorities. So if you have a good reason, I guess to put it in practical terms, for limiting the conception of a child, well, then that makes sense. It could be age, it could be health, it could be, you're a high risk to have a high risk pregnancy. Well, great. As long as we are not aborting children, as long as we're not taking fertilized eggs and saying we're going to get rid of them. Because once we have fertilized life, then I'm saying that we have we do not sit in some statement or some position, some throne of judgment to decide what life is worthy of life and what life is not. But we don't have life. We've got no life when it comes to half of the chromosomal ingredients, when all of them are together. And of course, I'm against that. So I had to nuance that answer, Karen, but I would say there are reasons that a Christian family, because of the argument that is made in 1 Corinthians 7, Matthew 19, other places where singleness is promoted, to say, hey, yeah, it makes sense that though marriage and relation should naturally relate in children or result in children, there are times that you would not do that. So that, I think, makes sense as long as we're talking preconception. I have to say that 5 times so that everyone knows. Everyone needs to know. Of course, I am anti-abortion. Anything that gets in the way of that life should be, it's a problem, and it should be problematic, in that we should never be taking life. We're not in that position to do that.